Hello, my name is Galina Kurdina. I live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I am a victim of psychotronic attacks, mind control experimentation, absolutely heinous fascist experimentation without my informed consent. Today I would like to talk one more time to talk about very important issue, a very important event. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture, Nils Melzer, reported to the United Nations Human Rights Council on psychological torture and so-called cyber torture. It happened on the 28th of February this year, 2020. He doesn't describe mind control attacks on us in details, but he says, in fact, states, corporate actors, and organized criminals not only have the capacity to conduct cyber operations inflicting severe suffering on countless individuals, but may well decide to do so for any of the purposes of torture. Next, he mentions in his report, in practice, cyber technology already plays the role of an enabler in the perpetration of both physical and psychological forms of torture, most notably through the collection and transmission of surveillance information and instructions to interrogators, through the dissemination of audio or video recordings of torture or murder for the purposes of intimidation, and increasingly also through the remote control or manipulation of stun belts, medical implants, and conceivably nano or neurotechnological devices. He actually talks about implanted chips, nanomaterials that are used as chips to send signals to mind and bodies of targeted individuals. Nils Melzer states, with the advent of the Internet, particularly state security services have been reported to use cyber technology, both in their own territory and abroad, for the systematic surveillance of a wide range of individuals and or for the direct interference with their unhindered access to cyber technology. Nils Melzer claims in his report to the United Nations session, individuals or groups systematically targeted by cyber surveillance and cyber harassment generally are left without any effective means of defense, escape, or self-protection, and at least in this respect often find themselves in a situation of powerlessness comparable to physical custody. Depending on the circumstances, the physical absence and anonymity of the perpetrator can even exacerbate the victim's emotions of helplessness, loss of control, and vulnerability, not unlike the stress-augmenting effect of blindfolding or hooding during physical torture. Sorry for my forced speech. Criminals interfere with my speech and do not let me talk normally, but I hope that you understand what I am reading. Likewise, the generalized shame inflicted by public exposure, defamation, and degradation can be just as traumatic as direct humiliation by perpetrators in a closed environment. As various studies on cyberbullying have shown, already harassment in comparatively limited environments can expose targeted individuals to extremely elevated and prolonged levels of anxiety, stress, social isolation, and depression, and significantly increases the risk of suicide. Arguably, therefore, much more systematic government-sponsored threats and harassment delivered through cyber technologies not only entail a situation of effective powerlessness, but may well inflict levels of anxiety, stress, shame, and guilt amounting to severe mental suffering as required for a finding of torture. And Nils Melzer concludes at the end of this report. More generally, in order to ensure the adequate implementation of the prohibition of torture and related legal obligations in present and future circumstances, its interpretation should evolve in line with new challenges and capabilities arising in relation to emerging technologies, not only in cyberspace, but also in areas of such as artificial intelligence, robotics, nano and neurotechnology, or pharmaceutical and biomedical sciences, including so-called human enhancement. Human enhancement. And there were excerpts from his report to United Nations, as I can remember, 43rd, just let me double check. Yes, 43rd session of this committee, United Nations Commission on Human Rights. And next, I would like to read a letter from one targeted individual, Magnus Olsen, who attended this session. We received this letter on the 8th of March 2020. Just a moment. United Nations Human Rights Council Special Rapporteur on Torture revealed during the 43rd HRC that cyber technology is not only used for Internet and 5G, it is also used to target individuals remotely through intimidation and harassment. On the 28th of February in Geneva, Professor Nils Melzer, UN Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, Degrading Treatment and Punishment, has officially confirmed that cyber torture exists, and investigation is now underway on how to tackle it legally. Electromagnetic radiation, radar, and surveillance technology are used to transfer sounds and thoughts into people's brain. United Nations started their investigation after receiving thousands of testimonies from so-called targeted individuals, TIs. Professor Nils Melzer is an expert in international law, and since 2016 he holds the Human Rights Chair at the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. His team has found evidence that cyber technology is used to inflict severe mental and physical sufferings. Judges think that physical torture is more serious than cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, he told The Guardian on the 21st of February. Torture is simply the deliberate instrumentalization of pain and suffering. These psychological torture methods are often used to circumvent the ban on torture because they don't leave any visible marks. But actually, maybe he's not informed very well because, of course, electromagnetic special effects, psychotronic attacks may leave special visible marks. For example, holes or burns, holes in skin of targeted individuals, or burnt skin, or ulcers, something like that. Next, cyber-psychological systems like cognitive radio are used to interrupt human perceptions and memory. They can also be used to spy on people violating personal integrity, which could lead to corruption and slavery in society. Cyber torture is also called no-touch torture or brain-machine interface. For example, DARPA calls this cyber torture bidirectional or two-way brain-machine interface. One way to handle this situation is to regulate new technologies and use artificial intelligence control mechanisms by independent and impartial investigators. The evidence gathered could then be used to convict criminals easier and quicker in the future. Professor Melzer and his team are now underway to create an international legal framework covering cyber technologies that can cause torture, which previously was hard to prove. In the future, it may be necessary to establish radio frequency spectrum police in order to protect humanity from cyber terrorism. Nils Melzer also revealed to me personally that HRC, Human Rights Council, will release several reports on this subject soon in the future. My dear, of course, we discussed all these subjects about laws and about mechanisms of investigation. I want to say to you that both laws and internal mechanisms of investigations have been in place for decades and maybe even centuries. All laws, but of course nobody minds if they are perfected and advanced. Of course, it will be better for everybody, for targeted individuals, for victims, for police, for justices, for lawyers, for everybody. But all these laws and mechanisms of investigation have been developed and in place and may be perfectly used at this moment. Okay, thank you very much for your help, for your support. All the best. Bye.